Dawn breaks over Hawaiian waters like liquid gold. Sailors polish brass fittings aboard mighty battleships, completely unaware that history's deadliest surprise approaches silently from the northern horizon. Sunday morning, December 7th, 1941. Paradise transforms into hell within minutes. You've witnessed the photographs countless times before. Twisted steel girders, burning black oil slicks, human bodies floating like abandoned broken dolls in contaminated harbor water. But have you ever truly wondered what those final precious seconds of absolute peace actually felt like? Ensign Joe George clutches his steaming coffee mug tightly aboard USS Arizona's forward deck. Rising steam resembles morning incense. He thinks longingly about his beautiful sweetheart waiting back home in rural Ohio. In exactly 12 terrifying minutes, he'll become part of history's most tragic underwater monument. 3 decisive battles. 3 pivotal moments when America's very soul hung precariously in the balance of fate. When inexperienced boys miraculously became immortal legends and established legends tragically became forgotten ghosts. The vast Pacific Ocean still remembers what we sometimes deliberately choose to forget completely. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida carefully adjusts his leather flight goggles with steady hands. Far below, Pearl Harbor sleeps peacefully like a massive sleeping giant awaiting awakening. His radio suddenly crackles ominously. Climb Mount Nitaka immediately. The secret coded signal for total attack. History pivots on one transmission. Battleship Row stretches majestically like an enormous steel cathedral built for worship of naval power. USS Oklahoma, USS West Virginia, USS California resting proudly. Names that once meant absolute invincible power. Soon they'll tragically mean ultimate sacrifice instead. The world's greatest naval base becomes an underwater graveyard. At precisely 7:55 a.m., the very first devastating bomb drops unexpectedly. Not targeting any military installation, but directly hitting a crowded mess hall where innocent sailors eat pancakes and dream nostalgically of distant home. Global warfare begins abruptly with ordinary breakfast cruelly interrupted forever. Picture this haunting scene clearly. Your own grandfather, barely 19 years old, helplessly watching his beloved ship violently explode into fragments. Massive oil fires painting the entire sky completely black with smoke. Closest friends disappearing forever beneath burning, contaminated water. How does anyone survive becoming a ghost? Dory Miller, ship's cook aboard USS West Virginia, desperately mans an anti-aircraft gun he's never received any training to operate properly. Military prejudice claimed he absolutely couldn't fight effectively in combat. Raw courage proves racial prejudice completely wrong today. True heroes emerge unexpectedly from kitchen galleys and mess halls. The Arizona's forward ammunition magazine detonates catastrophically with tremendous force. 1,100 brave men vanish completely in one single devastating heartbeat of destruction. The massive explosion lifts a 40,000-ton battleship from water like a child's disposable toy boat. Pure physics becomes unspeakable human tragedy instantaneously. Thick black smoke billows higher than distant mountain peaks on the horizon. Desperate radio operators frantically tap urgent messages repeatedly. This is absolutely no drill whatsoever. This is no drill. Simple words that completely shatter peaceful Sunday morning tranquility forever. America's cherished innocence dies with each transmitted message. In the chaotic confusion, someone's golden wedding ring falls from a severed hand onto burning deck plates below. Someone's promised future, someone's plan forever, rolling helplessly toward the scuppers and ocean. Personal love letters tragically become cold historical evidence in future academic textbooks and museums. Admiral Husband Kimmel watches his entire fleet burn helplessly from his headquarters window overlooking the harbor. Command stars on his shoulders suddenly feel infinitely heavier than ship anchors. Military command means accepting full responsibility always. Ultimate responsibility means carrying countless ghosts for your remaining lifetime. You certainly know about the battleships that sank tragically to the harbor bottom. But what about USS Nevada, the single battleship that successfully got underway during attack? Severely damaged, burning fiercely, but still moving forward defiantly. Sometimes true heroism looks exactly like refusing to die quietly. 18 devastating minutes total. That's precisely how long it took to completely cripple the mighty Pacific Fleet's offensive capability. 18 minutes to drag reluctant America into a global war it desperately didn't want. Time moves completely differently when eternity watches and judges human actions carefully. Hospital corpsman John Lynch runs frantically between burning ships, desperately pulling wounded sailors from thick, oil-slicked water surrounding the harbor. His medical bag weighs absolutely nothing physically. The crushing weight of watching close friends die slowly overwhelms everything else completely. Healing becomes impossible mathematical equations. The second devastating attack wave arrives at exactly 8:54 a.m. with renewed fury. Screaming dive bombers sound like mechanical banshees descending from hell itself. Hickam Field becomes a cratered moonscape of destruction. Dreams of flying become recurring nightmares of falling. Earth and sky trade places. In Washington, D.C., Secretary of State Cordell Hull meets with Japanese diplomatic envoys in his office. They speak eloquently of lasting peace while Hawaii burns uncontrollably thousands of miles away. Diplomatic negotiations become elaborate theater when flying bullets have already answered definitively the questions words cannot. President Franklin Roosevelt learns the devastating news at exactly 1:20 p.m. Eastern Time. His hand shakes slightly as he lights another cigarette with trembling fingers. The enormous weight of sending sons to die settles heavily on shoulders that already carry an entire economic depression. By 10 a.m. Hawaiian time, eerie silence finally returns to Pearl Harbor's waters. Not peaceful silence, the terrible quiet that always follows extreme violence. Thick smoke rises skyward like desperate prayers to heaven. Floating bodies accused like evidence. The Pacific Ocean learns to hold secrets. Seaman First Class James Rasmussen writes a heartfelt letter to his worried mother from the overcrowded hospital ward. Severe burns cover 60% of his young body, but his careful handwriting remains perfectly steady despite pain. "Don't worry about me, Ma. I'm fine here." 2,400 Americans died within 2 short hours of violence. But 18 million patriotic citizens would serve before war's end arrives. Pearl Harbor didn't break America's fighting spirit. It forged national determination into something infinitely harder than tempered steel or concrete. The massive oil fires burn continuously for several days afterward. Black smoke remains visible from 20 miles away across the Pacific. A funeral pyre that announces clearly to the entire watching world, America is no longer sleeping peacefully. The sleeping giant stirs angrily. December 8, 1941. Roosevelt addresses a joint session of Congress with grave determination. A date which will live in infamy forever. 7 simple words that transform a nation of isolationists into determined warriors overnight. Carefully chosen language becomes a declaration of national purpose. The USS Arizona still bleeds oil today, decades later. 9 drops per minute, they say accurately. The ship's eternal tears, 70+ years after the attack. Some wounds never heal properly. They just learn to weep quietly and remember their dead crew members forever. 6 months later, Admiral Chester Nimitz studies crucial intelligence reports in his Pearl Harbor office late at night. Japanese naval codes broken completely. Enemy strategic plans revealed entirely. The hunted becomes the hunter now. Midway approaches like inevitable destiny across the Pacific. You must understand this clearly. America was definitely losing this war badly at this point. Bataan fell. Corregidor surrendered. The rising sun painted itself boldly across half the Pacific Ocean's surface. Only authentic miracles could possibly change the tide of history now. Lieutenant Commander Joseph Rochefort works tirelessly in a basement, breaking Japanese naval codes methodically. No glory, no medals, just pure mathematics and intuition. Sometimes war's most important decisive battles happen in windowless rooms with calculating machines and determined mathematicians working around the clock. June 4, 1942. 400 miles northwest of tiny Midway Atoll. Admiral Nagumo's aircraft carriers cut through Pacific swells like mechanical sharks hunting prey. The identical fleet that attacked Pearl Harbor hunts again for American blood and revenge. Ensign George Gay climbs into his obsolete Devastator torpedo bomber's cockpit. 15 planes in his squadron today. He'll be the only one to return alive tomorrow. Heroes often wear the face of mathematics' cruelest equations. Bravery multiplied by probability equals sacrifice. Midway Island, a tiny dot of coral and sand in an ocean of absolutely nothing else. Strategic military value immeasurable. 2 runways and a prayer for victory. Sometimes the fate of entire civilizations turns on geography's smallest punctuation marks in history books. The Japanese battle plan seems absolutely perfect to their admirals. Lure the remaining American carriers into a deadly trap. Destroy them completely. Open the direct path to Hawaii, perhaps California. Chess masters moving pieces across an ocean-sized board of war. But Admiral Nimitz knows they're coming with certainty. Broken codes whisper enemy intentions directly. The ambushers become the ambushed instead. Military intelligence transforms from luxury into the deadliest weapon. Knowledge becomes the most lethal ammunition of all available. At 6 a.m., torpedo bombers launch from 3 American aircraft carriers with determination. Flying coffins, pilots call them honestly. Slow, obsolete, defenseless aircraft. Bravery often wears the mask of almost certain death ahead. They fly anyway toward their destiny. The attack goes terribly wrong immediately. Torpedo Squadron 8 finds the Japanese fleet but attacks alone, completely unsupported. 15 planes dive toward 4 enemy carriers bravely. 0 fighters tear them apart like paper birds in a hurricane. Sacrifice precedes victory. George Gay's plane crashes into the cold Pacific Ocean violently. He floats for 30 hours, hiding beneath a seat cushion, watching the battle unfold. Sometimes, history's greatest witnesses are those who accidentally survive their own incredible courage and live to tell stories. But the sacrifice matters tremendously. Torpedo bombers draw Japanese fighters down to sea level completely. High above, American dive bombers approach undetected. Tragedy creates opportunity. Death enables victory. War's mathematics balance impossibly on sacrifice and timing and luck. At 10:24 a.m., Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey spots the Japanese fleet below. 4 carriers in perfect formation like sitting ducks. He banks his dive bomber into the sun and history pivots again. 5 minutes will change the Pacific War forever. 5 minutes of destruction. In 5 minutes, 3 Japanese aircraft carriers become floating funeral pyres. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, names that meant invincibility now mean defeat. The Pacific War changes direction completely in 300 seconds of diving and bombing and burning. Admiral Nagumo stands on his bridge, helplessly watching his entire fleet burn around him. The same man who orchestrated Pearl Harbor's destruction now tastes defeat's bitter mathematics personally. Pride becomes ash. Victory becomes painful memory. Tables turn in warfare. February 19, 1945. Iwo Jima rises from Pacific waters like a black volcanic tooth of death. 8 square miles of volcanic rock and certain death. The doorstep to Japan itself. The last terrible lesson in courage, sacrifice, and determination. They called it Operation Detachment officially. 70,000 Marines versus 21,000 Japanese defenders dug in. Simple mathematics hiding complex horror underneath. Islands don't surrender voluntarily. They must be taken one bloody foxhole at a time through violence. Private First Class Ira Hayes adjusts his rifle strap nervously. Pima Indian from Arizona desert. He doesn't know that in 6 days, he'll help raise a flag that becomes America's most famous photograph ever. Destiny wears work boots and carries rifles. Mount Suribachi looms 546 feet above Sulphur Beaches ominously. Japanese guns nested in its volcanic rock like metallic spiders waiting. Every cave becomes a fortress. Every shadow hides a threat. Geography itself becomes the enemy of advancing Marines. The naval bombardment sounds like God clearing his throat angrily. Shells the size of automobiles turn solid rock into powder and dust. 3 days of continuous thunder. Yet somehow, impossibly, the defenders survive underground, waiting patiently for Americans to land. D-Day. Marines hit the black volcanic sand beaches running. Feet sink deep into volcanic ash. No cover except bodies of friends who fell first. Courage measured in yards gained per life lost. Mathematics written in blood and brotherhood and sacrifice. You cannot possibly imagine the sound of this battle. Machine guns chattering like mechanical insects of death. Mortars whistling death from sky above. Men screaming names of mothers they'll never see again. Hell has its own musical scale of suffering. Corpsman John Bradley runs between wounded Marines, bandaging holes that won't stop bleeding red. 19 years old, hands steadier than experienced surgeons. Heroes often disguise themselves as teenagers with medical bags and prayers and steady hands saving lives. The underground caves connect like an underground city of death. Japanese soldiers emerge behind American positions like ghosts from hell. Kill quickly, vanish completely, reappear elsewhere unexpectedly. The island fights back through its stone veins and volcanic arteries of war. Sergeant Mike Strank leads his squad up Suribachi's steep slopes courageously. Pittsburgh steelworker turned Marine fighter. He jokes constantly to calm his men's fears. Leadership sometimes means pretending courage when terror owns your heartbeat completely and absolutely. February 23rd. 5 Marines and 1 Navy corpsman reach Suribachi's summit finally. A small flag flies in the wind proudly. Too small for photographs. They find a larger one. History holds its breath for photographers. Flags become symbols. Joe Rosenthal clicks his camera shutter once. 1/400th of a second captured forever. 6 men raising cloth and metal into wind. The image travels around the world instantly. Sometimes hope needs a flag and 6 young men's silhouettes against sky. But the battle continues 31 more days after the flag raising. The flag raises morale, not victory yet. Every bunker costs lives. Every yard demands payment in blood. Glory photographs while horror continues its patient mathematics of death. Private Franklin Sousley writes his last letter home before a sniper's bullet finds him tomorrow. Tell Mom I love her dearly. Words that echo across decades of remembrance. Love letters become epitaphs. Promises become memories. Sons become ghosts. The underground tunnels seem endless and infinite. Flamethrowers become necessary tools of war. Young Americans burn other young men from caves like smoking out hornets. War transforms farmers' sons into dealers of industrial death. Conscience pays terrible prices. March 26th. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi leads his final charge with honor. Samurai sword against Marines' rifles. Honor against firepower. The old world dies violently in volcanic sand beneath Pacific stars. Ancient traditions become archaeology through warfare. 7,000 Americans died taking 8 square miles of volcanic rock completely. Nearly all 21,000 Japanese defenders perished defending it. Mathematics of madness. Geography purchased with graveyards. Islands cost everything they're worth in human blood. But Iwo Jima meant B-29 bombers could land safely, returning damaged from Japan raids. Emergency runways paid for in blood and sacrifice. Every life saved justified every life lost. Sacrifice balances, sacrifice in war's terrible accounting books. Ira Hayes returns home to Arizona Reservation. Heroes welcome, parades, handshakes from strangers. But his hands remember volcanic ash, not ticker tape celebrations. Sometimes surviving heroism proves harder than achieving it. Glory becomes burden. Fame becomes prison. The famous photograph hangs in hallways across America today. School children pledge allegiance beneath it daily. But the men who raised that flag, 3 died on Iwo Jima immediately. Immortality costs mortality. Fame costs lives. Memory costs everything. Today, the island grows beautiful flowers from volcanic soil enriched by sacrifice. Life from death. Beauty from horror. Children play where Marines bled and died. Time heals everything except memory. Peace gardens grow in former battlefields around the world. 3 battles taught America different lessons. Pearl Harbor. Isolation meant vulnerability completely. Midway proved intelligence defeats numbers. Iwo Jima showed freedom's price never decreases, only compounds interest across generations of sacrifice and service and remembrance. The Pacific Ocean holds no grudges against anyone. Waves wash over Arizona's hull, Midway's runways, Iwo Jima's beaches equally. Water forgives what men remember painfully. Geography outlasts politics. Tides erase footprints, but not the footsteps of history. Every American family lost someone to the Pacific's depths during the war. Sons, fathers, brothers, husbands disappeared forever. The ocean became a graveyard larger than any continent on Earth. Mourning stretched from California to the distant Philippines. Walk through Arlington Cemetery's rows. Read the headstones from 1941 to 45 carefully. Names and dates carved in marble permanently. But here's what stone cannot capture. They were boys who became men by dying young for freedom.